Hello and welcome to the MindCep Podcast. This is your host, Alex Muir, helping you maximize your performance. And in today's episode of our special guest series, we're going to be speaking with Gerald Leonard. Gerald is a TEDx speaker, musician, entrepreneur, and author. And please welcome Gerald Leonard to the podcast. And this episode is brought to you by RadioGuestList.com, the #1 free radio guest, podcast, and talk show guest expert interview booking service on the internet. Joining us today, Gerald, and just so our listeners know, tell us a little bit about your background and kind of what you do.
Okay, so what I do is I help companies to achieve more every day and really developing a culture that works in their organization. And so my background is I'm a classical and jazz bass player, that my bachelor's and master's in music, spent some time in the ministry and came out and got involved in IT. And it happened at a time where if you could spell IT, you could kind of get in. And so I had enough skills that I was able to pick up the technology and pick up using laptops and pick up a little bit of programming and enterprise networking. And what I realized was that for me, picking up a computer and getting into the details of networking and all the details there was like picking up another instrument, because I've been playing for so long. It was there's so much similarity between the thought process of using technology and playing music that it was basically like picking up another instrument. And from there, I began to kind of analyze my background and look at my skills and figured out that I was always really good at organizing chaos, if you will. And so I kind of accidentally stumbled into project management and then project server and an enterprise project management, started getting certifications in it. And, in 2014, I started my own company and I've been working for major corporations and government agencies, helping them implement very large enterprise systems and helping them, figure some things out, and just using my experience as a musician and as a consultant to help them build cultures that work and get teams to really work together like a good jazz band.
I find that so intriguing. As soon as I read this, I'm like, I have to hear what he has to say about how you combine your background as a musician to becoming a consultant. And I know there's probably, like you said, there's a lot of similarities. It's just on how you process that thinking, right?
Yeah, well, I have my first book out, which is called Culture's the Base, and I wrote that based on a project I was working on that was with a state Department of Transportation. And we, when we got in there, they had about 14,000 projects and a $16 billion budget for all the road construction across the state. So you talk about a lot of data, and we had to integrate it with another system. And, there were consulting firms that came in there before me that failed. And the reason they failed was not because they didn't know the technology. It was because they didn't spend time understanding the culture of the agency and what people out in the field how they would work and what they were going to accept and what they were not going to accept. So based on my experience, this was probably my 27th or 28th implementation of these solutions. So I spent time talking to them a lot about the culture, not only of the central office, but folks out in the field, folks who were living in near major cities, but also folks who lived out in the country. And we orchestrated or created a system that allowed them to use a lot of what they already knew, but gave them the benefits of the new system. So they were a lot more willing to accept it. And because of that, I started realizing how much culture of a rollout or implementation of something really makes a difference. And it's the same thing. And so, it's kind of, and the reason I came up with that title for that book was just like when you listen to music and you hear really good music, they always have great bass lines. Well, great companies or great projects, they always have great team culture, or the culture is really central to making the whole thing work. So it wasn't about the technology. It was really about the culture and helping them embrace the culture they already had and not making too many changes too fast.
Yeah, because I noticed that in companies, let's say, for example, I hear about mergers and acquisitions and stuff like that,
Yeah.
from, smaller companies to becoming into the larger company,
Right.
that integration of culture is always the largest challenge. And I feel like a lot of times it does fail because
Yeah.
people don't spend the time to learn about, okay, can these cultures, coincide and go together?
Exactly. Or what they try to do is implement a solution that changes the way processes are done. And what people don't realize is if if you're my manager and we have a system that says I implement some things in the system and you have to approve it, right? But now we're going to implement a new system and you're going to change that process. You're changing the culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot
Yeah.
of times what people don't think about is, oh, we're just going to implement the system. But they don't stop and think, wait a minute, we're actually changing the process and the way they're working. How comfortable are they with that? Well, what if we could do it in a way that kept that relationship going and only implemented a part of the solution, and then they could see the benefit of what's going on, and then we can slowly make the change once people have accepted it and they see the benefit to them as well. But if you just go in and you try to implement any solution and just do it by the book, normally you're going to fail because by the book doesn't take into consideration all the nuances that are out that people deal with in real life.
Yeah, yeah. There's so many variables when it comes to company culture,
Yeah.
that people don't take into account. And I can tell you from personal experience, this happened to me when we had so the bank that I was working for went through 3 to 4 CEOs by the time I left. So
Wow.
every time we had a new CEO, like the way because we were salespeople, I'm a salesperson, and
Okay.
the way that I sold, right, and the process and the way that I sold began to change every time we had a new leader or
Right, because they brought
CEO.
in their process.
Yeah. Because everyone, the new person that comes in, we would get frustrated because they would bring in their new process and they try to change everything. And
Right.
that's why we, our particular branch, we went through a lot of challenges that way.
Yeah.
And even though we had all these changes happen, I have to say my manager took it in stride, and he was really, really good because I think it was my manager that helped maintain our culture as a branch, right? He's like, don't worry about the rest of the bank, because this is a Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce that I worked for 4 years.
Okay.
I was at their affiliate bank, PC Financial, for 3 years, and
Gotcha.
every year since I left, there was a new CEO. So it definitely made things very challenging process wise, because I'm all about process.
Yeah.
With sales, because it is a process, as you know, and when all these changes took place, my boss kept telling me, he's like, don't worry about it, Alex, don't worry about it. I know, they're trying to change the process, but keep doing what you've been doing that's been making you successful. So
Yeah.
that's one thing that I learned, to how to counteract if someone's trying to change the process, and because there's always going to be people that don't agree, right? With these new CEOs or new leaders or board of directors. So you got to keep doing what's making you successful, and if the process has changed, sometimes you don't necessarily have to change with the process. You just have to keep doing. Sometimes you have to keep doing what you're doing to stay successful. So
yeah, and that's a really key point that I think a lot of leaders miss when it comes to implementing change, is that they come in and they have the authority. They've been given the job title and they have the authority to make the changes that they need to make, and they roll out these different changes. But what they haven't tapped into is the social network.
yeah,
Because many times when people figure out what works for them and they have a process that works, then at the social level, they're going to either share that with their teammates or they're going to keep it to themselves, depending on the culture, again, the culture of the organization. But they're going to figure out what works for them and keep doing that. And they will literally sabotage everything a new leader will try to do. Hence why they keep changing leaders, because the leaders keep getting sabotaged. Because everybody under them is like, okay, he's going to come in and say all this stuff, and then we're going to keep doing what we've been doing. And then pretty soon, what he's doing is not going to work, and they're going to bring somebody else on. So instead of somebody coming in and saying, okay, I'm this new CEO, I'm going to do this in a smart way. I'm going to, before I roll out all these changes, I'm going to go around and socialize and really get to know my people and understand how they do things and what's worked for them. Then I can see how I can slowly fit my new process into what's working instead of, well, I'm just going to bring in a whole new process and a whole new wineskin and make it all work and just pour everything into that. It's not going to work.
Yeah. You can. It's more of a melding together of current processes with yours.
Exactly.
With what's already working. Because I believe that every leader, rather than having to change everything when you're coming in as a new leader, you can meld together and mold together what you've learned that's worked for you with what's still working for the current organization. That can work. It definitely can. But you have to think about the social aspect of it and what's already working for the current network, and you have to ask them.
Exactly.
Because what happens, like you said, is they come in and they just change everything, and they don't really take into account, like, to talk to the team, talk to the people. Right. So that's what keeps great team cultures is, like, if no problem, if there's a new leader, no worries, but make sure that new leader is acquainting himself with the current culture in the organization. And if he does that, or he or she does that, then it's going to keep that culture intact and keep the people there and then if they ever need to grow, then it'll stimulate new prospects that want to work for that organization. So.
Exactly. And honestly, and I think this is where I integrated my musical training and experience with business. Because as a musician, if you walk into a new band, you're not going to change the way the other musicians are playing. Yeah. They're playing the way they're playing, right? And they have a certain sound and a certain culture within that band. So if you're going to fit in, guess what you have to do? You have to really listen. And so, you may be playing your part, but you have to really pay attention to, okay, what's the piano player doing? What's the drummer doing? Does he play ahead of the beat or does he play behind the beat? What's the bass player doing? What are the horn players doing? When they take a break, what do? Do they get together and talk, or do they kind of noodle around? What's the culture there? And you have to figure out how are you going to fit in. But the number one thing you have to do to fit in is listen. And in fact, I heard this from, I'm working on my next book called Workplace Jazz. And I'm doing some research on Freddie Ravel. He's played with Carlos Santana. He plays with Al Jarreau. He was the music director for Earth, Wind and Fire. And, Carlos Santana hired him because he was listening to him play and he really fit in. And I heard someone interviewing Freddie, and he said, the first thing you have to do as a musician is listen. But listen also has the word silent, also has all of the same letters as the word listen.
Yeah.
So if you do two words together, they have the same exact letters, but one is listen and the other one is silent. And so many times to really listen, you have to be silent to really be able to hear. And I think that's a lot of times what happens when leaders or groups come together is no one wants to be silent. They kind of want to promote themselves and what they're bringing to the table instead of being silent and listening and really absorbing where everybody's at. Because once you do that, you've given that group a gift. And something just something else that I have been able to do is do some study around neuroscience. And I don't know if you heard my podcast, or not my podcast, but my TEDx talk. And I talk about the neuroscience of music and practicing. Well, one of the things about that is when you're playing, our brains begin to secrete what they call dopamine or serotonin, all these positive chemicals. And when someone listens to you, they're honoring you by listening, the person who's being listened to, brain begins to secrete those positive neurochemicals. So it makes them even more positive towards you and more open to be an influence in the long run.
Right. Yeah, no, that's incredible. And I'm actually, that's a big part of my my study that has been for the last number of years is on brain science, neuroscience.
Yeah.
Optimizing health and
Yep.
your mental and physical health. That's like what my brand is all about. Um,
Okay.
and so everyone that I have on, I always gain some sort of value to have a better understanding of that. I'm like, okay, how can I think about this problem or this challenge differently, or how can I turn this problem into an opportunity? That's what I'm always looking for,
Right.
through the different perspectives of the guests that I have on, and I always find it very fascinating and intriguing to learn. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
And another question I had for you there, Gerald, was
Okay.
what challenges have you helped your customers overcome recently, especially with the COVID-19 crisis right now? Because I know we're kind of in a more
Yep.
virtual. Everyone's working. A lot of people are working from home, and we have minimal staff. There's
Right.
people that are working. They don't have a lot of help. So
Right.
how is your software or your strategy helping cut your customers with those challenges?
Well, one of the things that, and in fact, we were just talking about that today on our team call. So basically, one of the things that we do is every morning we have a like a 15-minute team stand-up call or a virtual call. And basically, it's kind of like the agile concept of a daily scrum or a daily stand-up. But what we do in that call is we talk about what's the plan for today, right? What's the goal? Are there any hot issues? Because right now we're doing a lot of support. Again, in the environment that I'm in, there's probably over 1,000 project managers around the state that I'm helping support on one of my clients, and we have this pretty complex enterprise system. So one of the things that we do, or that was happening, is we get to talking about all the details, but we didn't really have, because everything changed so fast, we didn't really have a system to make sure that no one dropped any, what I call breadcrumbs. When you go to a really fancy restaurant, the waiter comes up with a little silver tray and the spoon, and he kind of scrapes all the breadcrumbs into the little silver tray.
Right.
Well, sometimes that happens at work, where there are little bitty things that kind of just fall by the wayside and we forget about them, but they're important. So what we did is based on our conversation, I created kind of like a skeleton spreadsheet just with the column headings, and said, hey guys, I think what we need to do is, when we have our call, instead of just kind of talking off the cuff about what everybody's doing, let's get everything that we're dealing with on this spreadsheet. And so if someone's created a ticket for something, so now we got a tracking system for that. But before it becomes a ticket, well, who has it and where is it at, and has it been resolved, and what are the steps? So we spent a couple of days just kind of debating and tweaking this when we met. And pretty soon now, what we do when we come on the call, everybody dials in, we bring up something like, I think we're using Microsoft Teams, so we can all see the guys who's driving this screen, and every issue that's either come in or been resolved is captured in one place.
Wow. Yeah.
So,
And that's the biggest thing that I see that works really well, is having a system or software that can capture all of your activities or be able to track metrics in one area. Because the problem is, a lot of software doesn't integrate with everything. It only integrates with some things. So having software that you can be able to track all of your metrics in one place, that is like super strategic.
Right. And in fact, because again, we had to be agile, and this was like, okay, we don't need anything sophisticated. We don't need anything too difficult. We just need we need a place to keep everything stored. So we posted a spreadsheet on the Google Docs so that everybody could edit it or look at it. And we basically created some filters to be able to filter out data based on what was selected. And we just created a very simple system for tracking every single thing that we're working on as a team. And we have whose court is it in, who's working on it, who's assigned to it, has it been submitted, has it been resolved, has it been tested, has it been approved? And now it's like, okay, so what's going on? Well, we got to, there's no fires right now, so things are good. So, hey, have you been to the grocery store lately? So we started having those kind of conversations about life and our friendship with each other, because now we have a place to look and go, hey, that's an issue. We got to track. We know who's doing it. We know where it's going. Here's what has to happen to it. Give me a call later and let's work on it. So we have a very efficient process to be able to handle it. So now we can actually go back and build our friendships and just talk about, have part of our conversations is about, hey, what'd you do yesterday and how was your day?
Very good. Yeah. And I can really relate to that because I actually right now, I recently got laid off my job. I was in a promo marketing role, and I will be going back in the future, but just not right now because of the pandemic. But
yeah,
that role ended on March 19th. But before then, we have an amazing system as well that we can help our clients with. Because in promo marketing, it's all about offering a curated product solution for a client's brand, right?
Right.
Giving them products that relate to their brand. So let's say they're in WorkSafe, or they're in construction. They need kind of work safety gear, right? Like branded helmets, branded vests, high vis safety stuff, right? As an example.
Yeah.
And our system, it's called Common SKU, and it captures all of our activity in one place. So orders, invoicing, calls when we're calling clients, meetings that we have with clients, is all right there in one space.
Yeah.
And I have to say, it's probably one of the best systems I've ever used because you can literally just do everything all in that one system and you don't have to leave it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that's always what I've been trying to find because, as you know, we're in this virtual digital age and we're relying more and more on our technology to do our work. So the key is finding software or technologies that are integrated all together that you can use, that you don't really have to ever leave that software, like to do, because that's where the challenge comes in. Because then you're like you're trying to track in one area and then you're tracking in another area, and then that's when you start to miss things, and that's where problems arise. So
exactly. That sounds like an amazing piece of software.
It is. And as soon as I started the job, it sped up the learning curve for me.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing, right? A big thing about integrating new processes into companies is like, okay, can we keep all of our existing software intact, and then maybe just add in a new software that will just kind of complement that old software?
Right.
Now, now your enterprise system, is this a specific software that you help your clients with, and that you integrate into their culture?
Well, it's the software that I use it's not a proprietary software. It's basically one of the things that I do is use the Microsoft Project Server, which is an enterprise system. The software that I was talking about previously it wasn't some fancy enterprise system. It was basically a Excel spreadsheet and a Google Docs.
Gotcha.
That's all it was. But it was more than the technology. It was the process of, let's have one place to go to initially pull everything together so that we're not guessing what someone's doing. We actually have a record of what someone's doing. But again, there are a number of other solutions out there. But what I do is between things like the Project Server or the Power BI, where it's a reporting solution that allows teams who have a lot of data to be able to visualize all of that information. So it's basically a reporting engine for big data, and allows them to be able to take all that data that they're managing and then start being able to ask really good questions around, so how are things going in this department over a period of time? And what, if we were to forecast that, what does that look like? So they can start making better decisions. The other thing I do is I work with a couple other companies, and one's over in London, and it's something called Transparent Choice. And it's more about portfolio management. And it's all about being able to make complex decisions to streamline down to doing the right projects. Because anyone can do a project well, but if you're doing the wrong project, then it doesn't matter if you do it well or not. And so this solution basically helps people to really be able to, our teams, to really be able to select not only the best project, but the right projects that are aligned to where they're trying to go, so that when they start actually delivering on the project, it makes a big difference. And it's basically like a band making sure that they have the right songs. I mean, one of the things that made, you think about Earth, Wind, and Fire, you're thinking about the Rolling Stones. What made them such a great band? Yeah, they could play any song really well, but they chose the right songs for them. Do you know what I mean? And so in a lot of ways, a lot of times it's not just doing projects well, but it's choosing the right projects to do well and really finding that niche that's going to help you move the needle within the company, and whether it's, growing the business or transforming how you do work or just keeping the lights on.
Yeah. And you made a really good point there, because a lot of people, because they might not necessarily know whether that a project is the fit for them or not.
Right.
They basically, sometimes they're kind of forcing things more, right? Whether that be with their career or relationships, like it's more forced. But you want, in order to really truly succeed, you have to maximize your strengths, and sometimes it's just figuring out, okay, what am I really really good at, and then doing all the projects that you can and where your strengths lie.
Exactly. And then work becomes, when you're doing that, work becomes fun and it becomes easy, because when you're working in your strength, you end the day and you're not worn out and tired because you love what you get to do.
Yeah. Your energy is actually at a peak, and it keeps going.
Exactly.
Yeah. I just find that so fascinating. Like, once you can integrate your passion and your energy for the work that you do, and you find what it is in the realm of work that you're really, really good at, and maximize that, then great. That's how you can create great work.
Exactly. And you feel better about it, and you feel like you're actually working inside your mission. And in a lot of ways, a lot of times you don't feel like you're working because you're doing your life work.
Yeah, exactly. And what trends do you see in business cultures and performance improvement consulting?
Well, the thing that I see right now is, especially with what we're dealing with the COVID, is I think people are beginning to humanize work and realize that it's not about just getting a lot of things done, but it's about making a difference and having significance. Now, with that, it's also a major transition, because we're in a state of we're all forced to go virtual. Companies are realizing that, we used to make people come into the office, and really we actually can trust our employees to get even more done. And in fact, people are probably working more if they haven't been laid off and they're still working. They're probably working more now than they were before, because they don't have the commute time. They don't have all these other things that would get in the way. Obviously, they have to, keep, reaching out to build the relationships. But I think people are learning to use technology in a way that's smarter, but also I think they're using these things in a way that supports our life, and that they're realizing that work and family and all those things, that they're all integrated and they all work together. And so I don't see that when the vaccination comes out, or the vaccine comes out for this pandemic, I don't see things going back the way they were. I see that things are going to radically change, and there's going to be a new way to work. But I think the other challenge is that folks need to use this downtime, to really learn this new way, because when they get back, things are going to be different.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you on that, because from what I've been seeing with the trends and everything like that, they're saying that this pandemic can't fully go away, be minimized for at least 2 to 5 years.
Oh, so yeah.
That's big. That's very big.
Oh, yeah. And that's even after the vaccine comes out.
Yeah. And because of that, I've been, it's really made me think, well, if that's the way things are going to be, and there's going to be rigorous, disclaimers on, about the risk to exposure to COVID-19 moving forward, well, when people do go back to work, it's going to be people going back to work, it's going to be at a reduced capacity. And I think there's going to be a portion of those that are able to stay at work as long as there's social distancing. And then there's going to be a very large number that are still going to be able to work from home as long as they have the right software and the right tools to do so.
Right. And by the time I would say, if they haven't done it already, within the next, let's say 6 months to a year, companies will either purchase the tools, build the tools, or set up the process, and probably in a much shorter time than that, to make sure that everyone can be really productive and effective. They're going to, people are scrambling to upgrade their systems so that they can have all of their workers online. In fact, the agency I'm working in, across the state, everyone went virtual. So think about this. You have certain states where you have the agencies are supporting universities. They're supporting all of the federal or state agencies within that state. And now all of those workers that used to be coming into buildings and having just one data line are now having, let's say you have 10,000 workers. Now you have 10,000 separate data lines that you have to provide services for. So
Wow.
they've had to figure out how to scale what they call their VPN access or their remote access. And imagine once you do that and you put that capability in and you realize that people can be just as effective and people get used to that, why would they now miss Johnny's ball game to stay at work? Because they can get just as much done at work.
Yeah. Yeah.
At home, you know what I mean? Yeah. And in fact, I'm working with a producer because, like I said, I'm a classical and jazz bass player as well as a business consultant. I'm also working on an album, and I'm working with the producer on this album. So we're using tools like Pro Tools and something called the Machine where you can like write music and program it. Well, now there are musical tools where I can work with a producer in Philadelphia. I can record my music here where I live in Alabama and do it online. And we're over Skype or Zoom, and he can get it immediately up in Philadelphia and start mixing and mastering it as if I was in a studio in Philadelphia.
Wow. Yeah, that's absolutely incredible. And especially for musicians right now and the creatives, right? Actors, actresses, musicians.
Exactly.
Like you guys need access to those kinds of tools to keep your work going, right?
Exactly.
And to keep those creative endeavors going. So having this virtual access is key right now.
Right. And so right now, a lot of albums and a lot of folks who are, and there have been bands that have been doing this for a while, but there have been bands where they actually lived in different parts of the world, and they would get online to actually do their album and then come together to do concerts. But the majority of what they did as far as the recording and working together was all done virtually. And so now it's becoming a thing where if you have the right equipment with you, you can connect and, record your music, upload it to your producer. They can drop it down from the cloud and integrate it. They can get a singer from London, or they can get a horn player from Chicago and pull it all together and produce an album and put it out on iTunes or Stitcher or whatever musical distribution platform. And it sounds like you guys were in the studio together and you never met.
That's what I find remarkable. It's like not even in the same state, possibly not even the same country, and it can still be the same sound quality, the same, just like you're right there.
Yeah. And so for me, I think the biggest challenge for people right now is that they have to embrace being a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you're not gonna embrace being a lifelong learner, you're going to get left behind. Honestly, you really are. You're going to get left behind because things, especially now, are going to be changing so fast, and everything is going to be about being technically connected. And it's not good enough just to know how to make a phone call or use an app on an iPhone or a Droid. You're going to need to know how to get some work done or to leverage some of these technologies and get comfortable with them. Because if you don't, then it's going to be like, you're still in the horse and buggy and you have the Model T Ford. Even though it's an older car, it was much better than the horse and buggy, right?
Yeah, yeah. Our efficiencies are completely going to be changing. How we build our effectiveness at work, our how we stay efficient,
right?
And how we could collaborate with our team and with other people, and how we connect. It's all changing. It's all changing, and this pandemic is just an example of that. And I feel like more than ever, especially with a lot of this time off, there's definitely a lot of people taking advantage of the time, and they're learning how to create. They're learning how to create books, or get back to writing that book they want to write, or they're learning how to create a podcast, or just so many different tools and resources at our disposal. And having this time off is a great reflection time to be like, okay, am I doing the right thing? Am I in the right trajectory? career-wise. And if I'm not, utilize this time to relearn some things or learn new things.
Right. And what's really good too right now is because of all of the social networks, anyone who's a potential mentor is only a click away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they're also stuck in their house.
That's what I love about it. Because like normally you'd be a lot of mentors are in the office or they're on the road, they're on the field, and now that they're not doing that, it's giving me the opportunity to get to connect with them.
Exactly. So you're like, okay, so I'm going to reach out to this guy now.
Yeah.
He's way above my pay grade and he's way over here doing this great stuff. But you know what? He's stuck in his house.
Yeah.
and he's looking for somebody else to talk to besides his family who's sitting that he's been talking to for the last, month and a half or 2 months, 3 months. He's looking for some variety in the conversation. And so if you have a goal of whether it's podcasting, writing a book or whatever, and you want to find a mentor who's done that you admire, and now is the perfect time to reach out to them, to ping them, because I think they're going to be more than open to reaching back and saying, hey, I'm willing to help because, what else am I doing right now? I mean, I'm a little bit busy during the day and I got some things going on, but I got a lot more free time than I have busy time. And I think people would be a lot more open to coaching, mentoring, and supporting folks who are trying to make a difference and trying to move things or, make a change in their life.
No, for sure. And I think that's all the time we got today. I don't want to take too much of your time there, Gerald, but got some awesome golden nuggets from you today and really appreciate your time. And then one more thing before we go, where can we find, what platforms are you most active on and where can our listeners find you?
Well, if you want to learn anything about me, you go to my website and from that website, you can find me. You can find out anything you need to know about me professionally and some personally. And that is GeraldJLeonard.com. That's GeraldJLeonard.com. If you go there, you'll find out about my books, my programs, my online training, my music, my podcast, my webinars, all the things that I'm doing. You can learn about them there.
Awesome. Right on. Appreciate your time today, Gerald. You take care.
Okay, you too.
All right. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
I hope you all enjoyed this special guest series episode brought to you by RadioGuestList.com. Again, this is your host, Alex Muir. And if you'd like to learn more about kind of what I do and this podcast, MindCep Podcast, you can check me out on my social media. I always post all my links of my social media in every episode that I post. And I share all my posts, my podcast posts on my LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. So you'll be able to check out the podcast links on there. So if you want to connect with me, get to know me, I will be answering messages on there. If you have any questions. And again, if you want to hear more episodes like these, or if you have any feedback, please let me know on social media. You can send me a message, or you can feel free to follow my podcast and be sure to keep checking in and see what I'm up to. I really appreciate everyone that listens to my podcast, and hope you guys all enjoyed, and see y'all next time. Take care.